Hello, everybody. It's been a couple days. Let's continue the Exeter campaign. I've been feeling very ill, so luckily I'm recovering at this moment, but I couldn't wait. I wanted to continue this sudden twist with the ceiling collapse. So let's play back what happened
Chamber
last
of
time.
Fallen Kobolds. Time of day, around 4:35 p.m. As the group maintains their calm, the shadowy entity begins to shrink and dissipate, its chaotic tendrils retracting into a concentrated core. But instead of vanishing completely, the energy surges upward. The shadows twist and burn, boring through the stone ceiling like acid. Cracks spread rapidly across the chamber, accompanied by a deep, rumbling groan. Kaelin's eyes widen as she looks up. The ceiling! It's collapsing! Dust and debris rain down as the cracks widen, chunks of rock falling dangerously close to the group. The smaller kobolds screech in panic, scrambling toward the exits. The chamber shudders violently, the unstable ground threatening to give way beneath their feet. Skill challenge. The group must act quickly to escape.
Okay, so right now I'm here. Let's pass their session review. And I also wanted to see if it's received my updated instructions, which it did, luckily. So let's uh, let's restate what we have to do here. Okay, we're back. What skill checks do we need to do to avoid the falling ceiling collapsing?
Chamber of Fallen Kobolds. Time of day, around 4:40 p.m. As the ceiling begins to crack and collapse under the force of the shadowy veil, the group must act quickly to escape the chamber. Falling debris crashes around you, and the ground beneath your feet shudders violently. Skill challenge. Each character must contribute to the group's escape by using one of the following. 1. Dexterity save, DC 14, to dodge falling debris and avoid being struck. 2. Strength check, DC 13, to push through rubble or carry injured allies to safety. 3. Perception or survival D13, to identify the safest route out of the chamber. Each success reduces the risk of taking damage or becoming trapped. Let me know Mars's and Brock's rolls, and I'll decide for the rest of the group.
Okay, so it does follow my new instructions. The narrative event details are much shorter now. Doesn't overburden the AI to exceed its token count, which I'm pretty sure we have at this point. But in regards to what our characters will do, obviously we'll do dexterity save for Mars. He has a +5 in that department, and we'll do excuse me, we'll do a strength check here with a +3. We can't do a save. That wasn't one of the choices. So we are going to do those two. Let's do the dexterity save for Mars. 16. Okay. That exceeds the DC. And then strength. Ooh, surprising. 5. Okay. So we might take damage here. So 16 and 5. Mars had a dexterity save of 16. Brock had a strength check of 5. So obviously Brock may take some damage here. Luckily he's at full. He's at maximum. Oh, I'm so glad it's much shorter now.
Skill challenge results. 1. Mars, dexterity save, 16 success. Mars moves swiftly, ducking and weaving through falling debris with practiced precision. He avoids the larger chunks of stone, his sharp reflexes keeping him unharmed as he moves toward the safest path out of the chamber. 2. Brock, strength check, 5, fail. Brock attempts to push through a pile of collapsing rubble, but the unstable debris gives way under his strength, pinning one of his legs momentarily. He growls in frustration, trying to wrench himself free as smaller rocks rain down around him. The rest of the group. Kaelin, dexterity save, success. She moves quickly, guiding herself and Lareth through the chaos. Lareth, perception, success. He spots a narrow passage on the far side of the chamber, clear of debris, and shouts, "This way, over here." Thrain, success. Seeing Brock trapped, Thrain steps in and uses his hammer to clear the rubble, pinning him, freeing him just in time. Outcome. The group identifies a safe route out of the chamber, led by Lareth's sharp eye.
Yep.
Mars and Kalen reach the exit unharmed. Brock suffers 2 bludgeoning damage from falling debris, but is freed thanks to Thrain's quick intervention. The chamber continues to collapse behind you as the group scrambles through the narrow passage. Dust and echoes of falling stone fill the air as the shadowy veil dissipates entirely. Status update. The group has escaped the collapsing chamber, now standing in a more stable section of the mines. What's the next step? Rest briefly to recover, assess your position on the map, or press forward toward the Warden's vault.
Let's see. We can do a narrative hack right here because, like I said, this is becoming more of a co-op D&D session. So we will have some control of the wheel here. Now, I'm thinking what I wanted to do was actually mortally wound one of the NPCs, but I'm going to hold off on that just for a second. I'm thinking of something that might happen later on, but I won't exactly reveal it yet. But it has to do with, well, maybe at the end of the session. So, or up to the end of the session. Let's see. Let's do a narrative hack here. And let's say we're only in a single tunnel where the entrance is collapsed and we have no other direction to go. Narrative hack. We are stuck in a single path winding tunnel, not knowing where it goes. Behind us, the room is collapsed. We cannot escape, but have to push forward, as Mars suggests. And I already did the damage for Brock.
Winding Tunnel, around 4:45 p.m. As the dust settles, the group finds themselves in a narrow, winding tunnel. The faint echoes of falling stone linger behind them, the way back completely blocked by the collapsed chamber. The shadowy veil is gone, but its presence lingers like a phantom in the back of their minds. Mars takes a deep breath, glancing around the dimly lit passage. "No way back," he mutters. "Looks like this tunnel is our only option." We push forward, wherever it leads. Kalen dusts herself off, her daggers glinting faintly in the dim light. "Great, just the kind of predicament I love, a one-way trip into God's know what." Thrain grunts, his hammer resting on his shoulder. "Better than being buried alive. Let's keep moving before this tunnel decides to collapse too." Lareth, still catching his breath, nods. "At least we've got some breathing room. Let's see what's waiting for us at the other end." The tunnel. The passage twists and turns, the walls jagged and uneven. Strange claw marks etch the stone, their pattern erratic and unfamiliar. A faint, rhythmic dripping sound echoes from deeper within, but the tunnel's end remains obscured in shadow. Options. 1. Investigate the claw marks. Survival or investigation, DC 14. Determine if they belong to a specific creature or reveal hints about the tunnel's origin. 2. Move cautiously forward. Stealth or perception, DC 13. Avoid potential traps or ambushes as you progress. 3. Press forward quickly. Move at a faster pace, risking noise but saving time. What's the group's next step?
I think Mars will do a perception or a stealth check as we proceed. 14, which is just good enough. Excellent. Mars does a perception stealth check of 14 as he looks ahead, figuring out what is further down the tunnel. Well, I guess that's more perception. Either way, it was a success.
Winding Tay, around 4:50 p.m. Mars's stealth roll, 14. Success. Mars moves quietly through the tunnel, his footsteps muffled against the rough stone floor. He keeps low, blending into the shadows, his movements careful and deliberate to avoid making noise. Perception check result. As Mars peers down the winding path, his sharp eyes catch subtle details in the dim light. The tunnel slopes downward slightly, and the faint rhythmic dripping sound grows louder. He notices small, fresh claw marks along the walls and floor, much smaller than the ones in the collapsed chamber, likely from kobolds. In the distance, Mars spots a faint, flickering orange glow around a bend in the tunnel. It looks like firelight, possibly from torches or a larger source. The rhythmic sound of dripping water is joined by a faint chittering, unmistakably kobold voices echoing from further ahead. Mars returns to the group, his voice low. The tunnel narrows up ahead and slopes downward. There's firelight coming from around the corner, and I heard kobolds, probably a small group. It might be a camp or a patrol. Options for the group. 1. Scout further ahead. Send Mars or another stealthy member to investigate the source of the light and chittering more closely. 2. Plan an ambush. Prepare to strike before the kobolds notice the group.
Okay, so at this point, I believe we have passed the Cobalt section of this quest. I want to introduce a new enemy because in the last couple of sessions, we encountered that Drake that was half dead, and then all those possessed kobolds, or that large possessed kobold with the little minions running around. So there's some strange transitioning happening at the moment where we might have to push aside the kobold usual formula and introduce a new enemy. Let's keep aside the Cobalt formula for now on in this quest and introduce a new group of enemies due to the recent encounters with strange creatures. This is a story hack. Perhaps we hear some type of tribal music or drums. Let's see what it does here. Like I said, this is a co-op. Well, to an extent. Okay.
Time of day, around 4:55 p.m. As the group listens to Mars's report, a new sound begins to echo faintly through the tunnel. It's rhythmic and primal, the beating of tribal drums, growing louder with every passing moment. The sound reverberates off the jagged stone walls, creating an unsettling cadence that seeps into your chest. Kaylin's expression hardens, her daggers ready. That's not kobolds. Something else is down here. Thrain grips his hammer tightly, his eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. Whatever it is, it doesn't sound friendly. Drums mean organization, and organization means trouble. Mars narrows his eyes, his ears straining to catch any other noises beyond the drums. The faint flicker of orange light around the bend now seems more menacing, the shadows it casts swaying in time with the eerie rhythm. Lareth mutters, "Tribal drums in a place like this? What kind of creatures would even use them? This isn't kobold work." The tunnel's new threat. The beating drums hint at a more organized and dangerous enemy, perhaps a group of dark tribal warriors, monstrous humanoids, or even cursed spirits bound to protect the vault. The firelight and rhythmic sounds suggest a camp or ritual site, with unknown dangers waiting beyond the bend. Options for the group. 1. Scout the drumbeat's source, stealth or perception DC 14. Send someone forward to identify the new threat. 2. Plan a stealthy approach. The group moves quietly as a unit to avoid detection while learning more. 3. Prepare for combat. The group readies their weapons and approaches boldly, anticipating a fight. What's the group's next move?
What is the next group's move here? Let's say Mars will attempt to do the usual and scout up ahead. Mars offers to scout up ahead, but perhaps there is some pushback from the team due to prior events going south. I want to create some conflict with the team here, which will lead up to that death of one of the characters. I'm hoping I can work it. I have an idea. I just want to get to this little area where this supposed tribal humanoids
Winding
are.
time of day, around 5 p.m. Mars steps forward, bow in hand, his movements confident despite the eerie atmosphere. I'll scout ahead. We need to know what's making that noise before we charge in blindly. Kaylin raises an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. Mars, you've been good at scouting, but let's not forget how the last quiet approach turned out. That shadowy thing nearly had us tearing each other apart. Thrain grunts in agreement, his hammer resting on his shoulder. We need you ready to fight, not wandering off alone into another trap. Mars narrows his eyes. I get it, but this is what I do. If we all march in there together, we'll make enough noise to wake the entire mine. Let me do my job. Lareth chimes in with a smirk. He's not wrong. We're not exactly built for sneaking, except for Kalen maybe. Let him take the lead, but we stay close enough to back him up this time. Kalen sighs, but relents. Fine. Scout ahead, but keep us in your line of sight. If you run into trouble, you'd better signal fast. Mars's plan. Mars will move ahead quietly, scouting the source of the drums, while the group follows at a safe distance, ready to intervene if needed. Skill check. Mars must roll Stealth DC 14 to avoid detection as he scouts the source of the drums. Let me know the roll.
Let's say that Mars will be joined by the other Ranger. I want to say it's Lareth. Gosh, I don't even remember the side characters here. Kalen or Lareth. Okay, we'll do a stealth check, which was astronomically higher than I expected. 25. Mars then thinks of perhaps just going with someone else who is also good at stealth. Mars rolled stealth 25. Let's see who joins Mars on this little stealth mission. I love that just the random memory updates. It's like, okay, yeah, that works. So while this populates, there is one thing I wish that GPT, this is just, a want. This is something like a hope in the future as they're continuously updating this whole entire site, is that I want the individual project folders to have their own unique memory so that it's not adding to your account's memory. It's solely attached to the folder so that when you play these kind of D&D or RPG games with AI, if that's your thing, then anything that's vital information like locations, characters, quests, items, uh, monumental events, certain details like what that I was saying earlier about the Mars decides just got ahead, which again, that's not entirely important, but it's more for the current event. But if OpenAI would implement a memory for these project folders, which I actually thought was going to be the plan when they when they announced the projects back in 12 days of OpenAI, it would have been um, a huge advantage for people who want to do stuff like this. But I understand that's also a huge toll on the GPUs of using your account. Maybe it would have been an extra feature. But that's also debatable. However, I hope it's, done in the future because it makes total sense that memory is locked into a certain project, not your entire account with all the other generic conversations you have that are not categorized.
Winding
So,
tunnel. Time of day. Around 5:05 p.m. Mars glances at the team, reconsidering his approach. On second thought, I'll take someone with me. 2 sets of eyes are better than 1, and if there's trouble, we won't be alone. Kalen steps forward, her daggers at her sides. I'll go. I can move quietly enough, and you won't have to worry about me slowing you down. The rest of the team holds back, forming a defensive position while Mars and Kalen move ahead. Mars's stealth roll, 25. Success. Mars's movements are silent, his steps blending seamlessly with the natural shadows of the tunnel. Kalen's stealth roll. Success. She keeps pace with Mars, her movements equally quiet, her daggers ready in case of danger. The two advance toward the source of the drumming. The tunnel opens into a larger chamber, its walls lined with strange glowing totems carved from bone and stone. The flickering orange light comes from several large braziers, their flames dancing to the rhythm of the drums. At the center of the chamber are tall, humanoid figures, their bodies adorned with jagged armor made from obsidian-like stone. Their faces are obscured by grotesque masks resembling snarling beasts. They chant in a guttural, primal language, their movements synchronized with the drums. A strange altar sits in the middle of the chamber, faintly glowing with runic symbols.
there it is.
Kalen leans in, whispering to Mars. Definitely not kobolds. Looks like some kind of cult or warriors. And that altar, it's got trouble written all over it. Options. 1. Continue observing. Study the figures, the altar, or the chamber for more details. 2. Return to the group. Report back and form a plan. 3. Initiate an ambush. Strike first to disrupt whatever ritual or meeting is occurring. What do Mars and Kalen do?
Story hack. Let's say the Emberstone is on that pedestal in the middle of the ritual, and I believe Kalen most likely will recognize it first. I mean, it's about time we encounter it. It's been 6 episodes or so. Oh, there's another memory. I think pedestal was the correct term for that. Okay, any of those.
Time of day, around 5:10 p.m. As Mars and Kalen observe the scene, Kalen's eyes widen, her breath catching as she spots the object at the center of the altar. That's it, she whispers urgently. The Emberstone. It's here. The stone glows faintly, pulsating with an inner fire that seems to sync with the rhythm of the drums. Its heat is palpable even from the edges of the chamber, and the runic symbols carved into the altar seem to react to its presence, glowing brighter with each beat. Mars glances at her, his expression sharp. You're sure? Kalen nods, her voice low but steady. No doubt about it. That's the artifact we've been chasing. But whatever these things are, she gestures toward the masked humanoids. They're using it for something. A ritual, maybe. Whatever it is, we need to act fast. The masked figures continue their chanting, their guttural voices rising and falling with the drum beats. Their movements are methodical, focused entirely on the altar and the Emberstone.
Alter.
Options for Mars and Kalen. 1. Return to the group. Report back and form a coordinated plan to retrieve the Emberstone. 2. Observe the ritual further. Study the figures and the Emberstone's interactions with the altar to understand what they're doing. Arcana or Insight, DC 15. 3. Attempt a stealthy approach. Sneak closer to disrupt the ritual or steal the Emberstone outright. Stealth, DC 16. What's their call?
Okay. 11. Darn it. Okay. Mars rolled Insight 11 while making a comical joke or a slight smirk referencing how Brock's animal friend was not the Emberstone from earlier. I wasn't sure how to phrase that. Maybe a comic whip or something.
Time of day, around 5:15 p.m. Mars squints at the ritual, trying to piece together the meaning behind the chanting and the glowing runes on the altar. The movements of the masked figures are deliberate, but their purpose remains elusive. Whatever connection the Emberstone has to their actions is unclear. He leans slightly toward Kalen, a smirk breaking the tension. Well, guess Brock's animal buddy wasn't the Emberstone after all. Pretty sure it couldn't glow like that even if it tried. Kalen huffs softly, half amused despite the gravity of the situation. Focus, Mars. That thing's going to be a lot harder to deal with than Brock's little beastie, especially if those masked lunatics have their way. The drumming grows louder, the flames of the braziers flaring with every beat. The masked figures raise their arms, their guttural chanting reaching a fever pitch. Options for Mars and Kalen. 1. Return to the group, retreat to the others and prepare a plan to deal with the ritual. 2. Interrupt the ritual. Use an action, e.g. ranged attacks or a thrown object, to disrupt the figures and halt the ceremony. 3. Approach the altar stealthily. Attempt to get closer without being noticed to retrieve the Emberstone. Stealth, DC 16. What's Mars's call?
We'll go back to the team. Mars says, let's go back to the team. Tell them what we see.
Ritual chamber. Around 5:20 p.m. Mars pulls back slightly, motioning to Kalen. Let's not rush this. We need to get back to the others, tell them what we saw, and hit this thing with a plan. If we charge in blind, we're just asking for trouble. Kalen nods in agreement. her eyes lingering on the Emberstone. Good call. That thing isn't going anywhere fast, but if those masked figures finish whatever they're doing, it might be a different story. Let's move. Mars and Kalen retreat. The two silently slip back through the tunnel, their movements as careful as before to avoid detection. The drumming fades slightly as they distance themselves from the chamber, the eerie glow of the altar disappearing into the darkness. When they reunite with the group, Kalen wastes no time. We found it. The Emberstone. It's on an altar in the middle of the next chamber. Thrain's hammer shifts on his shoulder. Finally, so what's the problem? Kalen exchanges a glance with Mars. The problem is a group of masked figures. Big ones, armored and definitely not kobolds. They're performing some kind of ritual, and the stone's at the center of it. Lareth smirks nervously. Masked, armored, chanting? Sounds like we're about to crash a very angry party. Options for the team. 1. Plan a coordinated attack. Prepare for a full-on assault to take the Emberstone by force. 2. Attempt a stealthy approach. Sneak into the chamber as a group and position yourselves for a surprise attack. 3. Disrupt the ritual with ranged attacks. Use the element of surprise to target the altar or the figures from a distance. What's the team's decision?
Okay, this is the point where there is a plot twist. So what I have in mind, if you have seen this show anime called Solo Leveling, in the first season, in one of the maybe midpoint episodes or so, the main character goes into a dungeon crawl with a friend and another team of heroes, adventurers. But they get double crossed. They're used just to get more loot for the team that they're with. That's what I want to do here. Kalen used, will use, and has been both Mars and Brock just to get close to the Emberstone, and she will say to create distraction. And I'm going to try to word it here piece by piece for the AI to get. Story hack and a plot twist. Kaylin smirks, looking at her team. They draw their weapons at both Mars and Brock, telling them that they've done good so far, and to finish the job for them, they want to force Mars and Brock to distract the cult while the three get the Emberstone for themselves, leaving our heroes defenseless, in trouble. This was all a ruse. This was all a ploy. They basically use other gullible adventurers to do their dirty work, while to some extent they do take part in the quest. But once they reach a vital moment like this, where it's the actual quest item, then they're like, okay, guess what? We're throwing you in the lion's den. So this is the plot twist I meant, and our team is not going to have it. At least that's what I'm planning.
The
Yeah.
betrayal, time of day, around
Yep.
5:30 p.m. As Mars finishes recounting the scene in the ritual chamber, Kalen smirks, her hand tightening on her daggers. You've done well, Mars. Both of you. Better than I expected, really. Her tone turns icy, and she steps back, drawing her weapons. Lareth raises his shortbow, his expression unreadable but his aim steady. Thrain shifts his hammer in his hands, planting himself between Mars, Brock, and the exit. Mars narrows his eyes, stepping slightly closer to Brock. What's this about, Kalen? Kalen's smirk widens. The Emberstone, Mars. That's what this is about. You two were just the tools we needed to get here. Scouts, muscle, distractions. But now you're just liabilities. So here's the deal. You head in there, make a nice big mess, and keep the cult busy while we grab the stone. Do that, and maybe we'll let you walk out of here. Lareth sighs, almost apologetically. Don't take it personally, it's just business. Thrain grunts, his hammer resting on his shoulder. You can fight us if you want, but we both know how that'll end. Just do your part and stay out of the way. The air grows tense, the flickering light of the tunnel casting sharp shadows across their faces. The drumming from the ritual chamber continues in the background, a sinister reminder of the danger that awaits. Mars and Brock's current status. Surrounded. Kalen, Lareth, and Thrain block their retreat. Disarmatively, trust has been shattered, leaving Mars and Brock vulnerable to both the cult and their former allies. Options for Mars and Brock. 1. Attempt to talk them down. Persuasion or deception, DC 15. Convince Kaelin and her group to reconsider their betrayal. 2. Feign compliance and prepare an ambush. Deception, DC 14. Pretend to agree while planning a counterattack. 3. Attack
Hmm.
outright. Fight to take control of the situation, despite being outnumbered and disadvantaged. What's Mars and Brock's call?
Well, first, whoever pulled up in the car needs to get out of here. This is the wrong era. Just love the random sound effects that sometimes the voice will spit out. That was pretty good. So let's see. This should be called Fast and Furious instead. I do like option number two to feign compliance. Well, let's have a little chemistry between our two characters first before we choose. Let's see. Mars looks to Brock, knowing Brock is impatient and would attack without hesitation, hot-headed, but Brock scruffs. Mars calms him down with a little gesture with his hand. Mars agrees. We will do the deception check, feign compliance, and prepare an ambush. Scrubs. Hmm.
The betrayal day around 5:35 p.m. Mars glances at Brock, his face calm despite the tension crackling in the air. He knows Brock's temper could explode at any moment, but with a subtle gesture, a raised hand, a slight shake of his head, Mars steadies him. Let's not make this worse, he murmurs softly, just loud enough for Brock to hear. Brock scuffs the ground with his boot but says nothing, his grip on his great axe tightening. He follows Mars's lead, his frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Mars turns back to Kaelin, his expression neutral. All right, he says smoothly. We'll do it. We'll distract the cult. You get the Emberstone. But once this is done, we're done. No more tricks, no more backstabbing. Agreed? Kaelin's smirk doesn't waver as she steps back, lowering her daggers slightly. Smart choice, Mars. I knew you'd see reason. Lareth watches them closely, his bow still raised but not drawn. Thrain simply grunts, his hammer resting on his shoulder, his expression unreadable. Skill check. Mars rolls, deception, DC 14, to feign compliance and convince the trio of his sincerity. Let me know the result. If
Mars,
successful, Mars and Brock will have the opportunity to plan their counterattack.
Mars does not have a. He's not a good liar. Let's see what happens here. Oh my gosh. We okay, we got it. I thought it was 16 originally, but we got it. Deception roll of 16.
Mars deception roll, 16. Kaelin tilts her head, studying Mars for a moment before nodding. Good. Glad we're on the same page. Make it messy, make it loud, and we'll handle the rest. Don't get yourselves killed. You've been useful so far. Lareth lowers his bow slightly, his stance relaxing. Guess that's settled then. Just don't screw this up. Thrain nods, stepping aside to allow Mars and Brock a path toward the ritual chamber. Go on. We'll be right behind you when the time is right. Mars and Brock's status. The betrayal trio believes their compliance, giving Mars and Brock a brief window to act. Options for Mars and Brock. 1. Prepare an ambush. Lead Kaelin's group closer to the chamber, then strike first before the cult notices. 2. Sabotage the ritual directly. Enter the chamber and disrupt the ritual to create chaos, forcing Kaelin's hand. 3. Double bluff. Appear to proceed with the plan while seeking an opening to turn the cult against Kaelin's group. What's Mars and Brock's plan?
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna have Mars shoot an arrow straight at the Emberstone, and they'll both jump if there is a ledge onto the ground, a lower level. That's what I'm thinking. Like this tunnel kind of goes into a descending path down into this ritual. So I will have Mars and Brock approach the end of the tunnel up to the ritual room. Mars will fire an arrow at the Emberstone, hoping to destroy it. Then they both jump down to spring chaos, surprising Kaylin and her team and the cultist. Okay, so this might be an attack roll.
Time of day, around 5:40. Mars and Brock approach the edge of the tunnel, the rhythmic drums growing louder with every step. The orange light from the braziers dances across the walls, and the guttural chanting fills the air. The masked cultists remain focused on their ritual, their movements synchronized as they surround the glowing emberstone on its pedestal. Mars pauses at the edge of the tunnel, nocking an arrow and taking careful aim at the emberstone. He exhales, steadying his breath as he whispers to Brock, "Ready?" Brock grins, his grip tightening on his great axe. "Always." With a sharp twang, Mars releases the arrow, sending it streaking through the chamber toward the emberstone.
Okay.
Mars's attack roll. Roll for Mars's longbow attack, 1d20 plus 5. Let me know the result, and we'll resolve the outcome.
Attack roll with 15 from the longbow. Huh.
Mars's attack roll, 15. The arrow flies true, striking the emberstone with a resounding crack. The glowing artifact vibrates violently on its pedestal, its inner fire surging and pulsing chaotically. The runes on the altar flicker and distort, their once rhythmic glow now sputtering erratically. A shockwave of heat ripples through the chamber, causing the cultists to stagger and their chanting to falter. The drumming ceases as one of the braziers topples, its flames spilling across the floor. The masked figures whirl around in confusion, their guttural voices rising in alarm. Mars turns to Brock, a sly grin on his face. That should do it. With a roar, Brock leaps into the chamber, his great axe raised high. Mars follows, bow at the ready, as the cultists scramble to react to the chaos erupting around them. The scene. The cultists. Disoriented by the disruption, the masked figures stumble and shout in confusion, their focus entirely broken. Kaylin's still in the tunnel. Kaylin, Lareth, and Thrain are caught off guard by Mars and Brock's bold move. Kaylin's smirk fades, replaced with fury. "What the hell are they doing?" she hisses. The Emberstone. The artifact continues to vibrate and pulse chaotically, its glow now unstable and erratic. Options for Mars and Brock. 1. Engage the cultists. Take advantage of the chaos and attack the disoriented figures. 2. Focus on Kaylin's group. Turn their betrayal back on them while the cultists are distracted. 3. Target the Emberstone further. Attempt to destroy or destabilize it completely, risking the unknown consequences. What's the plan?
Okay. Let's turn the betrayal back on them. Mars will attempt to turn the betrayal back on Kaylin's team if they do appear at the tunnel above. Not sure how. This might be acting or performance.
Time of day, around 5:45. As chaos erupts in the chamber, Mars's sharp eyes flick toward the tunnel above. Sure enough, Kaylin, Lareth, and Thrain appear, their weapons drawn as they take in the broken ritual and the scrambling cultists below. Kaylin's furious gaze locks onto Mars and Brock. "You idiots! What have you done?" Mars wastes no time, calling out loudly to the cultists in a calculated, mocking tone. "There's your real enemy! The ones up there, they want your precious stone for themselves. They used us to get here." The cultists freeze for a moment, their masked faces snapping toward the tunnel. Their guttural voices rise in unison, their aggression now clearly directed at Kalen's group. The tension in the room shifts palpably as the cultists' focus turns toward the perceived greater threat. Marol's Deception DC 14 to successfully redirect the cultists' rage toward Kalen's group. Let me know the roll. If successful, the cultists will engage Kalen, Lareth, and Thrain, leaving Mars and Brock to act freely in the chaos.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have to stop here, but this was a superb episode session, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Next time, we'll see how this turns out. And unfortunately, I was not able to get to the death scene, but I do have to go. So, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on Exeter.